Hi everyone, welcome to Midnight Storytime. Before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. I picked up a blind girl on my way home one evening. Initially, it was just an act of kindness, offering her a place to stay for a single night. Who could have guessed she would take advantage of the situation and refuse to leave? Not only did she claim my small bed as her own, but she would even cling to my clothes while I was out, breathing in my scent and doing all sorts of strange, secretive things. Later, she recovered her sight and was revealed to be the missing heiress of Marine Crest. By then, she already had a fiancé. Before she could ever see my face clearly, I returned home to find she had vanished without a trace. After 3 years in hiding, I heard that Elena had married and never looked back. As fate would have it, I had an art exhibition scheduled in Marine Crest. My agent led me to meet the investors, but I hesitated to step forward. There she was, Elena, the great lady of Marine Crest, standing in the center of the crowd. She held a glass of champagne, basking in the praise of others. "Elena, I heard you invested in this exhibition because of your fiancé," someone remarked. "He must be the genius behind these works." Elena took a sip of her champagne. The guest's smile widened. "When you were accidentally injured back then, he must have been the one who nursed you back to health. Now that the two of you are getting married, it's truly a match made in heaven." Elena shook her head indifferently. Before the guest could say another word, she swirled her glass and shattered it against the floor in a fit of sudden discontent. "He's right here," she said. I was so shocked that I ducked behind my agent. Then, she let out a hollow laugh and pointed out the window. "He's watching us from heaven." I exhaled a long sigh of relief. That's right, I'm dead. What was I worried about? 3 years ago, to escape Elena's grasp, I had faked my own death certificate. She had even gone so far as to erect a tombstone for me. Even if I stood right in front of her now, she surely wouldn't recognize me. My agent suddenly leaned in and whispered, "That guy was truly unlucky. If he had lived until now, he'd have everything a man could ever want." I bowed my head. "Not a chance," I thought. My agent leaned closer. "Julian, you're still too young to understand. When a woman is at her most vulnerable, that's when she's the most emotional. All a man has to do is whisper a few sweet words, and she's hooked." I pursed my lips, feeling a pang of guilt. Is that really how it was? I thought back to the Elena from 3 years ago. Was it really just because of my meticulous care that she saw me as her white moonlight, the one that got away? Back then, her body was covered in scars from the car accident. She didn't just need daily medication. The agonizing itch of new skin knitting together made her groan and writhe in discomfort. Truth be told, I had never even had a girlfriend before her. With a face flushed bright red, I only dared to rub her skin through the fabric of her clothes to soothe her. But that wasn't enough for her. She would grab my hand and pull it toward her chest, gasping for breath and crying out that it itched too much. Her small face would turn crimson. I used to panic, thinking she couldn't breathe. Other times, she would sit atop me in a fit of restless fever, her cold lips randomly biting every inch of my skin like a stray cat. Thinking about it now, my breathing involuntarily grew heavy. "Mr. Julian?" My agent took my hand and led me straight toward Elena. The woman, radiating an aura of icy elegance, looked up and smiled thinly. This gentleman, he looked somewhat familiar. Elena scanned me from head to toe. I felt the blood in my veins run cold. My hand instinctively twitched toward my right arm. "It's okay," I told myself. "She won't find out it's me." Even though we shared a bed for a year, and she had tasted every inch of my face and body with that sharp mouth of hers, she had been blind. She never knew what I looked like. I had even lied to her, told her I was already a dead man. "Miss Elena, this is our newly signed artist, Julian." My agent bowed slightly, gently clinking his glass against Elena's. She narrowed her eyes, her gaze deep and searching, as if trying to suck the very soul out of me. It was exactly like the first time we met. 2 years ago, I had just finished paying my grandmother's hospital bills when I received the news. The surgery had failed 10 minutes prior. I collapsed in the hallway, sobbing with my head in my hands. Just then, I saw the nurses wheeling out a gurney. They were whispering about a car accident victim. They couldn't find her family, and because she was so young and the costs were so high, they were prepared to give up. Elena lay on that bed, her eyes wide but sightless, her entire body encased in gauze. Her hand gripped the side of the bed so hard her knuckles were white. Her parched lips were muttering one thing. "Don't save me." I clutched my wallet tightly. The only family I had left was gone. I didn't need this money anymore. Perhaps my grandmother in heaven was afraid I'd be alone and sent this girl to me as a final arrangement. I stood up abruptly and grabbed the nurse's arm. "I have the money." Back then, I used every cent of my savings to save Elena's life. I brought her home and nursed her back to health with everything I had. In those days, she would often purr against my ear like a little kitten. I once deluded myself into thinking that living like that would be enough. "Julian, what are you doing?" My agent's voice snapped me back to reality. I quickly lowered my head and clinked my glass against Elena's. Her eyes flickered toward my right hand. Because of an accident 3 years ago, this hand was supposed to be ruined, unable to paint, making even daily life a struggle. The memory made my palms sweat. I could barely keep my grip on the glass. Elena pursed her lips, took a sip of her wine, and turned away to chat with someone else. She really didn't recognize me. My agent tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Julian, are you stupid? I'm telling you, Miss Elena is breathtaking, but she's not someone a nobody like us can dream about. She and her fiancé have been betrothed since they were children. If you dare touch so much as a hair on her head today, you'll be fish bait by tomorrow. She's untouchable." I looked down. Untouchable? No one knew her body better than I did. To get away from her 3 years ago, I had lied to the investor who wanted to sponsor my art. I told her I only cared about her beauty. I remember Elena's eyes turning bloodshot with tears. She had clung to my chest, gripping my waist, begging me not to leave. My heart had turned to stone then as I pushed her away. I told her I only saved her so I could play with her. I didn't know where she had learned it, but upon hearing that, she had simply shoved me down onto the bed. If my agent knew the truth, he'd probably light 3 sticks of incense for me on the spot and hand me my death certificate. I should be thanking her fiancé for not killing me yet. The exhibition ends today, I thought. We will never meet again. But despite the logic, an indescribable restlessness stirred in my heart. Suddenly, Elena's voice rang out from behind me. "Julian." I was so shocked I spun around instantly. The moment our eyes met, my brain scrambled for a reaction. Did she know? Did she recognize me? A chill raced down my spine and through my entire body. Just as I was frantically rehearsing an explanation, a chubby little hand grabbed the hem of my trousers. I gasped in relief. It was just my neighbor's young daughter, also named Julian. The young girl had an intellectual disability. Her parents were rarely home, so I used to help look after her whenever I had the time. Although she couldn't speak, she could make signaling sounds to communicate. When I faked my death 3 years ago, I left a large sum of money for her family. Why was she here now, held in Elena's arms? And what did that sound just now mean? Was the girl calling out to me, or was she just making noise? If Elena realized who I was, would she really throw me to the fish? An inexplicable chill ran through me. As I stood there, frozen stiff, Elena knelt down. She opened her arms and spoke softly to the girl. "Julian, come here." My heart stopped, but the girl seemed to recognize something she hadn't seen in a long time. She gripped my trouser leg tightly, refusing to let go no matter what. Her eyes were red with tears. Elena smiled thinly. "It seems Dee Dee really likes you, Mr. Julian." A lump formed in my throat. Terrified of being exposed by the child's reaction, I yanked my suit jacket away. I forced myself to speak with a detached, cold voice. "It's normal for children to seek affection from adults they see." I then feigned disgust, lifting my leg as if to avoid her touch. The atmosphere in the room instantly turned icy. Elena pulled the girl into a hug, her voice dropping to a freezing temperature. "Mr. Julian, don't you usually care for small, vulnerable things?" "I don't," I replied. "Why not?" "Because I don't have the ability to support them for a lifetime." I touched my lips instinctively. I used to think I could save my grandmother. I thought I could help my father. I even thought I could be with Elena. In the end, I was the one who ended up alone. I have always been alone. I turned away immediately, walking off without looking back. A second later, the girl burst into loud sobs in Elena's arms. "Brother, brother," she cried out in slurred, indistinct sounds, trying to stop me. I kept walking. If Elena was willing to marry her fiancé, what was left for me to miss? Suddenly, the sound of a heavy picture frame crashing to the floor echoed behind me. I spun around instinctively. Elena had collapsed to the ground while holding the girl. A painting from an exhibition lay shattered beside them. The moment I saw Elena's twisted ankle, I lost all my composure. I rushed over and pulled her into my arms to check for injuries. Are you hurt? Does it pain you anywhere else? Her eyes were wet and red as she looked up at me. For a moment, I felt a wave of crushing shame. She looked exactly like she did 3 years ago, curled up in my arms, vulnerable and broken. I had a dream, she said, her voice trembling. Elena, what's wrong? A warm, polished voice drifted down from above. The newcomer was none other than Elena's fiancé, Arthur. As he approached, the air was filled with a fragrance, a sharp, expensive cologne that felt alien to me. It served as a stark reminder of the gap between us, a distance as vast as the clouds and the mud. I remembered the last time Arthur had stepped into my shabby little house. He had pinched his nose in disgust, his polished leather shoes clicking against a floor that no matter how hard I scrubbed, could never be truly clean. The smell of mold, he had sneered back then. How could Elena possibly endure this? You look so weak. How could you ever protect her? I'm afraid she's the one who would have to protect you. At that time, my right hand was already injured. If it had been the old me, I would have held my head high and stood my ground against him. But every word Arthur said was true. Back then, I could only lower my head and let him dictate the terms of my departure. But 3 years have passed. It's over. I don't need to bow to him anymore. I helped Elena to her feet, moving to walk away without sparing Arthur a glance. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me. In the next second, Arthur maintained his artificial, rehearsed smile. Thank you for assisting my fiancé. Fiancé? He spoke as if he were already her legal guardian, staking his claim in front of everyone. But I bet he wouldn't dare tell a soul that he actually knew who I was. Arthur pulled Elena into his arms. Elena and I are getting married soon. Nothing can be allowed to happen to her. Elena stared at me, her gaze piercing, as if she were trying to break into the very depths of my soul. In that moment of stalemate, I forced a smile. Congratulations, Miss Elena. I wish you a century of happiness in your marriage. Suddenly, a thick mist seemed to cloud Elena's eyes. She repeated my words under her breath, syllable by syllable. A century of happiness. I felt a sudden, suffocating urge to leave. I could only pretend that nothing was wrong as I fled in a state of quiet panic. Mr. Julian, Elena called out suddenly. She took a red wedding invitation from the secretary behind her and held it out. Our wedding is next week. You must attend. Her tone didn't sound like an invitation. Instead, it carried the weight of a powerful, undeniable threat. Why? We had only just met again. To her, I should be nothing more than a stranger seen once in a crowd. Had she discovered something? But as I watched her and Arthur together, the way they drew close to one another, I abandoned my lingering hopes. I forced a smile and accepted the invitation. The exhibition ends in a week. I'm afraid I'll already have left Marine Crest by then, I said. Arthur leaned in and kissed Elena's hair, his eyes fixed directly on mine. Yes, Mr. Lee, please make sure to attend our wedding. Those little, unimportant things are all in the past now. It's over. I nodded, and as soon as I was out of sight, I tossed the invitation into a trash can. Let the past stay buried. For Elena, those memories were likely a painful chapter she never wanted to revisit. I thought that once the exhibition closed, I would never have to face her again. I was wrong. The next morning, my agent called. He told me the investors were throwing a celebration party. My instinct was to refuse. The mere thought of it made my skin crawl, but my agent was shouting into the phone. Elena personally requested your presence. Julian, she said, if you show up, the final payment for the exhibition will be cleared immediately. At the party, my agent grabbed me by the arm, nodding to various investors as he dragged me toward Elena. She reached out her hand in greeting. Julian, it's been a long time. My heart rate spiked. Did she find out? Is she testing me? I fought to keep my composure. I reached out, shaking her hand briefly but formally. Miss Elena, my surname is Lee. Please don't call me Julian. Back then, I had never told her my real name. I had only told her that my name was the same as my grandmother's. That was why, for all these years, she had been unable to trace me. My agent, thinking I was being incredibly arrogant, tugged at my sleeve in a panic. Julian, greet her properly. Elena kept her gaze locked on mine. Coincidentally, Julian was the name of an old friend of mine. He was a painter, too. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. Seeing you now, I can't help but feel a bit sentimental. My agent quietly wiped the sweat from his brow and apologized profusely. He hadn't expected her to strike such a somber note so suddenly. I tried to laugh it off, preparing to find a quiet corner to hide in, but Elena waved her hand and insisted we sit right next to her. She didn't even wait for me to refuse. My agent practically pinned me into the seat. Fine, I'll just sit and eat. But the next second, I saw the table was piled high with seafood. My mouth twitched uncontrollably. Participating in this art exhibition was becoming a life-threatening endeavor. The man who supposedly never came back, am deathly allergic to seafood. It's the kind of allergy that causes my throat to swell until I suffocate. And Elena knew this very well. I held my chopsticks frozen. Julia, Mr. Lee, don't you want to eat? Elena asked, her voice laced with hidden meaning. I stirred. If I refused now, her suspicions would only deepen. It usually takes a little while for the allergic reaction to kick in. I just needed to find an excuse to leave shortly after and head straight to the hospital. I picked up my chopsticks, chose a small piece of salmon, closed my eyes, and shoved it into my mouth. Suddenly, someone clamped down on my wrist. It was Elena. Her eyes were burning with a terrifying fury. She looked as though she was about to devour me alive. I swallowed the fish, feeling a wave of guilt, not daring to look up at her. She flicked her wrist to the staff behind her. Immediately, waiters brought out 8 specific dishes and 1 soup. They stood behind me and said in unison, "Mr. Lee, please enjoy your meal." My agent was baffled and intimidated by the display. He leaned in and whispered under his breath, "Incredible, Julian. Are you secretly Miss Elena's pretty boy? Look at that intense expression on her face. You better be careful Arthur doesn't find out, or you really will be fish bait." I stared at the dishes and the soup placed before me, my grip tightening on my chopsticks. These are the exact dishes from a conversation we had in that shabby little house. I had told her that once I was successful, I'd take her to this very hotel. We would order 8 dishes and a soup, acting like royalty. The memory flooded back. The day I finalized Elena's hospital discharge. I had pressed the remaining change into her hand, ready to walk away. But she had grabbed the hem of my shirt, her gray, sightless eyes searching for me. She had screamed my name right there at the hospital entrance. "Julian, don't you want me anymore?" I had grabbed her shoulders firmly. "It's time for you to go back to your own home." Elena shook her head. Even though she couldn't see, there was a haunting magic in her gaze that could cast a spell on anyone. "I only have you. Please don't abandon me. I'll do anything you want." The scars on her cheeks hadn't fully healed yet. She was drenched in tears, refusing to let go. People passing by in the hospital lobby pointed at us, whispering that I looked like a husband heartlessly abandoning his wife. I could only stand there, gritting my teeth in silence. I ended up taking her back to my dilapidated little house. The doctor told me Elena's eyes required expensive imported medicine. To afford it, I worked 3 jobs a day. No matter how late I returned at night, she would always be waiting for me. On the table would be a dinner she had cooked herself. "Julian, I'm the one dragging you down," she would whisper. "Once I'm better, I won't let you work so hard anymore. As long as you want it, I'll even pluck the moon from the sky for you. Believe me, Julian." Looking at her hands, which were covered in blisters from the stove, I was, of course, deeply moved. I later discovered that for a woman like Elena, who was injured, blind, and had never touched a spatula in her life, attempting to cook was an act of extreme devotion. Back then, I would just hold her sadly in my arms. I'd carefully apply ointment to her burns, blowing on them and teasing her. "It's nothing. I'd be working those jobs whether you were here or not. Just wait until I have enough money. I'm going to take you to that luxury hotel by the coast. We'll order 8 dishes and a soup. We'll eat until we can't move, and then I'll get your surgery done. We'll have a bigger house. Every day you can drink tea and arrange flowers, and we'll enjoy life together. If you like kids, we'll have a baby. If not, we'll just raise a furry one." Listening to my rambling, Elena wouldn't say a word. She would simply sit on my lap, running her fingers through my hair and carefully kissing my cheeks until she eventually pushed me down onto the bed. Looking back, Elena's lack of reaction wasn't out of disdain or contempt. For her, A woman born to be a queen, overlooking the entire city, dealing with an ant living in the mud like me, was effortless. I wanted a future that didn't look like that shack, but that was a past I would never regret. Suddenly, someone entered the private room, snapping me out of my memories. It was Arthur, dressed in a pristine white suit. He walked over with an air of practiced elegance and sat beside Elena. They looked exactly like the high society couple everyone expected them to be. Their shared aura was so cold and sophisticated that it naturally alienated everyone else in the room. Arthur reached out and placed a shrimp on Elena's plate. "Elena, why did you come to this celebration party in person? Did you know I was in the room next door?" The people around the table immediately began to hoot and cheer at the display of affection. I kept my head down, pretending to focus on my food, but my eyes involuntarily flickered toward Elena. She didn't look displeased. Arthur even raised his eyebrows with a satisfied smirk. A wave of bitterness washed over me. So, the only reason Elena was here today was because her fiancé happened to be in the private room next door. "No." Elena's voice rang out. She casually took the shrimp from her plate and put it in her mouth. I took a sharp, deep breath. It was too suffocating. I didn't want to see them entwined together. I didn't want to hear the crowd praising them as a match made in heaven. "I have an emergency. Goodbye." I bolted out of the private room, not even bothering to grab my coat. As I waited for the bus at the entrance, the cool night breeze snapped me back to reality. A familiar voice drifted from behind me. "Elena, you're just forcing yourself to let him go," Arthur said. "They only sound the same. The man is dead. Besides, before he left, he gave the girl a huge sum of money. It's just that you and Didi still can't forget him." Elena must have noticed I left without my coat, and Arthur had followed her out. But what Arthur said was only half true. 3 years ago, Arthur had tracked me down, demanding I leave Elena. I had agreed without hesitation. I even shamelessly held out my hand and demanded $1 million. But the idea that Elena could never forget me? That was impossible. I remembered that day clearly. I had come home early after buying her medicine, only to see the woman who was supposed to be blind touching the face of the man standing before her with a gentle, loving expression. Her eyes were clear, as light as water. To the world, she was still blind, but there she was, resting her head against his chest, whispering that she wanted to leave that place as quickly as possible. I had clutched the medicine in my hand, my chest tightening with a sharp pain. It turned out that during our entire time together, I was the only one who was blind. So, when Arthur later insisted that they had a long-standing marriage contract and threw photos of them in bed together in front of me, I didn't even flinch. I negotiated the terms with a cold, unwavering heart. I successfully took his $1 million. He demanded that I fake my death and close all my accounts. It was a fair trade. I could live off that $1 million for years. Returning to my rented hotel room that night, I began packing my bags in a frenzy. I wanted to leave this den of lies and secrets as soon as possible. Just then, my agent's phone rang. "Julian, do you remember that little girl Miss Elena brought to the exhibition? She came to the party tonight and got lost. Everyone is frantic. You left early. Did you see her? If you do, report it immediately." Didi was lost. The celebration was packed with people. A girl like Didi wouldn't even know her way around. She could easily wander off. Back then, I was always terrified she'd lose her way home. I used to repeat the directions to her over and over, telling her that no matter what happened, I would always be waiting for her at home. The hotel tonight happened to be right next to that old, dilapidated shack. Would Didi go there? I couldn't stop the thought. Driven by panic, I raced toward the shack. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. I saw the silhouette of an adult sitting on the sofa. A second later, the door slammed shut behind me. The lights flickered on at the same time. "You're home late today." My breath hitched. It was Elena. She was sitting on the sofa, wearing the very coat I had left behind at the hotel. I felt like a man walking toward his own execution. "Miss Elena, Didi isn't here. You must be mistaken." Elena's eyes were locked onto mine, unmoving. Didi has always been terrified of strangers. Yet, she approached you at the gallery on her own. She couldn't bear to be away from you. And when that painting fell, you rushed to hold me without a second thought. In all of Marine Crest, there isn't a second person who would dare do that. You knew you were allergic to seafood, yet you still picked up those chopsticks in front of me. Besides your injured right hand. Julian, I was blind, not stupid. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Your voice, your body. I know you better than you know yourself. How could I possibly not recognize you? It turned out that from the moment we met again, my cover had been completely blown. If that was the case, what was the point in hiding anymore? So what? I snapped. So what if you recognized me? You're the wealthiest woman in Marine Crest now, with all the power in the world. What did you possibly want from me? A tiny ant living in the dirt. You wanted to run away after I fell asleep. Elena's eyes were bloodshot. She began walking toward me, step by step, her expression filled with a haunting kind of joy. The click of her high heels against the floor was sharp and alien. I braced myself, waiting for her to slap me. I truly had no defense. I hadn't stayed with her until the end. But the slap never came. Instead, her cold, soft lips pressed against my Adam's apple. Elena's lips pulled away for a moment, but her hands began to roam. She traced my eyes with her fingertips, then slid them slowly over the bridge of my nose, my cheeks, and finally my lips. Finally, I can see you clearly, she whispered. You look exactly as I imagined. Julian, do you have any idea how badly I wanted to see your face 3 years ago? It was a tragedy, but now, looking at your handsome face, I will never forget it. She looked at me as if she were appreciating a masterpiece in a gallery. Her intense gaze made my heart race, a feeling I hated. 3 years ago, I had imagined 1,000 different ways she might regain her sight. But now, it was too late. I jerked my head back, avoiding her touch, and spoke in a low, biting tone. Is this fun for you? Now that you have money, power, and handsome men at your beck and call, are you bored? Are you so lonely that you want to play these cheap games with me again? Fine. I spat out, not caring about the consequences of my words. No problem. Just pay me. I'll play along for as long as you want. Being the romantic interest of the great lady of Marine Crest, I'm sure there's a long line of men waiting for that spot. I'm just looking for a paycheck. A storm seemed to brew in Elena's eyes. She stared at me, her voice trembling. So, you abandoned me back then just for money. And now, the only reason you're willing to come back is for money? Do you have no feelings for me at all? None, I started to say, but I didn't get the chance to finish. She lunged at me, sinking her teeth into my lip and biting hard, as if venting years of suppressed rage. Her cold hands moved over my body, slowly undoing the buttons of my shirt, moving downward. No matter how much I tried to push her away, she remained indifferent to my resistance. In the heat of it, I gritted my teeth and shouted, fine, 100,000 a night. I won't lose out on that deal. Do you want to pay up front or later? That finally did it. My words sparked a fire in her eyes. Suddenly, the door was kicked open, and a group of bodyguards in black suits swarmed into the shack. I was blindfolded and hauled away. When the blindfold was finally ripped off, I found myself lying on a massive, luxurious bed inside Elena's villa. She was there, a silk nightgown draped around her, looking down at me with sleepy, smoldering eyes. The thought of being forced here made my skin crawl. This might even be the new bed she's supposed to share with Arthur. He'd be beyond furious if he knew I was here. You dragged me here. What do you want? I snapped. Did we ever live in luxury like this? Back then, I was struggling just to keep us fed. Elena looked lonely for a fleeting moment, but she quickly turned and pulled open the nightstand drawer. She took out a small white porcelain jar and opened it slowly. A sharp, pungent medicinal scent immediately filled the room. I had a specialist prepare this ointment, she whispered. It might still work on your right hand. As she spoke, she scooped out a bit of the dark salve and began to rub it gently into my right palm. My hand throbbed with a ghost of the old pain, but I pulled back mentally. When Arthur first approached me 3 years ago, I had refused him without a second thought. I believed in Elena. I believed I could still protect her. But one night, a group of thugs broke into our shack. They held a knife to her waist. I was terrified, but I grabbed the blade with my bare right hand to shield her. That was the night the nerves in my palm were severed. I could never paint with that hand again. Back then, I was strong, fierce. I protected her like a moth diving into a flame. But in the 3 years since I left her, I've long since taught myself to paint with my left hand. This jar of ointment? As far as I'm concerned, it's useless. I jerked my right hand back and gave her a hollow, dry smile. Miss Elena, kidnapping a man and bringing him home in the middle of the night, even placing him on your future wedding bed. I wonder what your fiancé would think if he found out. Elena looked at me in silence. After a while, she let out a soft laugh. Are you jealous, Julian? Don't worry. This bed, this room, you're the only one who has ever been here. I didn't expect you to be so bothersome, I said angrily. Rich people really have too much time on their hands. Your wedding is days away, and yet here you are, entangled with another man. The next second, she suddenly wrapped her arms around my waist and pressed her face against my chest. The warmth of her body made my heart skip a beat. There has never been another man, she whispered, her voice breaking. I only ever wanted to marry you. Impossible. I forced myself to maintain the cold wall of distance in my heart. I pushed her out of my arms, my movements sharp and final. The man who lived in that shack died 3 years ago. The person standing in front of you now is Julian, a man you have only met twice. Why? Elena's eyes were bloodshot, brimming with tears. I had to send for those specialists. I knew about the medicine. I knew about your hand. Don't bother, I said, trying to maintain a cold distance. A young woman like you and a man like me were meant to be strangers. If all of this is just because I once helped you, then let it go. Just let me leave. I started out speaking calmly, but the Queen of Marine Crest was testing my resolve. My voice began to tremble despite myself. Elena kept her head bowed as I poured out the bitterness that had been festering in my heart. After I had said my piece, I tried once more to push her away. In a moment of realization, she looked up and took a sharp breath. Her smile was more painful to look at than a sob. She looked like a wounded kitten. 3 years ago, she had used this exact look to deceive me over and over again. I hardened my heart and turned my head, refusing to look at her any longer. After a long silence, as if she had finally summoned every ounce of her courage, she reached out and took hold of my right hand. Will you come to the wedding next week? She asked. Her voice was filled with desperation, yet it remained steady. If you come, I promise I will let you go. I promise you, Julian, you will be able to leave. I will even give you a sum of money. She secretly squeezed my right hand, her grip trembling. I finally nodded in agreement. If my time with Elena felt like a dream, then Julian was the obsession of my past that I needed to bury. You have to come, she pleaded. Please. That night, I was forced to stay at Elena's villa. She claimed that if she let me go back to my hotel, I would surely miss the date and skip her wedding. I truly couldn't fathom what was going on in her head. She was about to marry Arthur, yet she was forcing her dead ex-lover to live under her roof. Is this just how the wealthy entertain themselves? Since I couldn't understand it, I stopped trying to. Early the next morning, I headed downstairs for breakfast, only to find Arthur leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He looked miserable. Mr. Lee, he sneered. I truly underestimated you. Did you think that if Elena recognized you, the two of you could just pick up where you left off? You're dreaming. I chuckled inwardly at his words. I guessed Arthur didn't dare tell her about the secret deal we made 3 years ago. I'm sure he had spent the last few years adding fuel to the fire, painting me not just as a pretty boy who used her, but as a greedy mercenary who demanded $1 million to abandon her without a second thought. In a way, Arthur wasn't lying. He was just steering the ship in the direction he wanted. After all, Elena and I lacked even the most basic foundation of trust. But I wasn't the same Julian from 3 years ago, and Elena was no longer my helpless assistant. Since the truth was already out, I had nothing left to fear. Mr. Arthur, I think you're confused, I said calmly. It is Miss Elena who is harassing me right now. She's the one who won't let me leave, not the other way around. I hope you can take better care of your fiancé. I looked him up and down. Arthur had the perfect background and a prestigious education. Why was he acting like a jealous concubine in a palace drama? Wouldn't it be better to focus on his own dignity? My words seemed to infuriate him. But since I was currently a guest in Elena's home, he could only resort to harsh words. No matter what you say today, he hissed, Elena will still be my bride next week. I nonchalantly patted his shoulder as I walked past him. It'll all be over soon. During the remaining days, Elena occasionally brought Dee Dee over to play. Sometimes, looking at them, I began to feel a strange, lingering sense of shame. Nothing seemed to have changed from 3 years ago. Yet, as the servants occasionally passed by the villa, they acted as constant reminders of the truth. I didn't belong here. The wedding day drew closer with every passing hour. I should have been overjoyed at the prospect of finally leaving Elena behind, yet a deep, lingering sense of reluctance took root in my heart. On the morning of the ceremony, I was escorted by bodyguards into a waiting room. Staff members dressed me in a luxurious, high-end tuxedo. I was then led to the wedding venue itself. When I looked up at the massive display board, my heart nearly stopped. The names of the protagonists were written in giant letters. Groom, Julian. Bride, Elena. There was even an exaggerated diamond-studded heart between the names. The guests were in a state of utter shock. Outside the main hall, Arthur stood helpless and fuming with rage. I quickly snatched a wedding invitation from a staff member's hand. Opening it, I realized the text was different from the one I had received earlier. My love, I invite you to come and play. It turned out I had been played by Elena from the very start. She didn't want me as a guest. She truly intended to marry me. For a moment, I was paralyzed. My pulse quickened. Elena, radiant in her wedding gown, walked toward me and gently took hold of my right hand. She looked at me with shimmering, tearful eyes. Julian, I never intended to deceive you from the beginning. Amidst the gasps of the distinguished guests, she continued, I don't want you to ever be hurt because of me again. Those childhood betrothals were nothing more than a joke between our parents. I have already explained everything to the elders. From start to finish, I have only ever had you. I only want to marry you. As for Arthur and the others, we only have a business partnership. In the future, if you don't wish for it, all such collaborations will end. There will be no more secrets or suspicions between us. Her eyes welled up as she produced a ring. I am ready to be the wife of Julian, to love and respect you forever. Are you willing? Of course, I didn't say yes. Elena didn't make things difficult for me after the ceremony. I asked the bodyguards to drive me back to the villa, where I lay on the bed, feeling dazed, scrolling through my phone. I saw that Elena and I were already trending at the top of the search results. Elena, chairperson of the Lou Group, declares her love for a mystery man. In an instant, I went from being an obscure, struggling artist to a lucky koi, a man worshipped by the entire internet for his sudden rise to fortune. Below the posts were thousands of comments from netizens, amazed to see a real-life Cinderella story, but with the genders reversed. The internet was in an uproar. A common man takes care of an overbearing female CEO who lost her memory, pays her medical bills, and eventually becomes the son-in-law of a billionaire family. Reaching the pinnacle of life? People were calling it an unequal relationship, a calculated scheme to swindle both money and heart. They debated whether her final words could truly heal the past, or if the whole thing was just toxic trash. What does true love look like for the wealthy? For Julian, being picked up by the richest woman in Marine Crest was luck of a legendary magnitude. People even started changing their phone wallpapers to his face, treating him like a god of fortune. Then, things took a turn toward the surreal, like a plot straight out of a web novel. My paintings suddenly became incredibly famous. I became a rising star in the world of calligraphy and fine arts almost overnight. In just half a year, I held 5 consecutive art exhibitions. It turned out that nearly 2/3 of my works had been bought up by Elena's agency for staggering sums. My art was everywhere. It hung in the offices of the Lou Group, in the lobbies of their real estate partners, and was even scanned and projected onto the massive outdoor billboards of the city's largest shopping malls. After her failed proposal at the wedding, Elena began a relentless, high-scale pursuit of me. There were other things she did that made me too embarrassed to even step outside. She had small tricks for every part of my life. Whenever I mentioned liking a specific restaurant, the Lou Group would buy the entire establishment the very next day. When I walked back in, the waiters would stand in a perfect line at the door and shout in unison, "Mr. Lee, are you ready to marry Miss Elena today?" If I bought a certain clothing brand 3 times in a row, it was no surprise when that brand announced a collaboration with the Lou Group. The theme of the collection? Has Miss Elena married Mr. Lee today? On my birthday, Elena set off fireworks along the Marine Crest River for an entire hour. As the smoke cleared, the sparks spelled out, "Miss Lou loves Mr. Lee." There's even a super topic on social media dedicated to our relationship. The daily content consists of one question. Was President Lou's proposal successful today? She never mentioned letting me go again. As for me, I spend my time quietly counting the zeros in my bank account. I still don't know how to answer her. Perhaps because of everything that happened back then, I still feel a little too sorry for myself to say yes. Perhaps it was because our statuses were now worlds apart, but the distance remained. Then came that night. After dinner, we were walking along the riverbank. The bodyguards were discreetly following from a distance. Suddenly, a man in black lunged from the roadside, aiming a blade directly at my waist. I tried to react, but in the next second, Elena threw herself forward, pushing me away with incredible force. The sickening sound of a knife piercing flesh followed. The bodyguards swarmed in instantly, subduing the attacker, but Elena's clothes were already soaked crimson with blood. Elena! I caught her as her body slumped. One of my hands pressed desperately against her wound to stem the flow. I whispered to her, though I was really trying to comfort myself, "Don't be afraid. You'll be fine. The ambulance is almost here." She struggled to keep her eyes open, her pale lips trembling as they moved without sound. Elena was rushed into the operating room. Even then, she had managed to order the doctors to check me thoroughly from head to toe. It turned out I only had a few scratches, while her condition was critical. I sat in the waiting room for 6 agonizing hours. The bodyguards worked quickly. The investigation revealed that the man in black was sent by Arthur. He wanted to eliminate me and take Elena back by force. The doctors concluded that Elena's injury was severe. The blade had nearly pierced her kidney. She was ordered to remain on bed rest. Since she had been hurt protecting me, the bodyguards insisted I stay by her side. That night, she kept calling my name softly. "Julian, I want some porridge, the kind you make with your own hands. Otherwise, my kidney won't heal properly. Julian, my back itches. Can you scratch it for me? I won't be able to sleep otherwise. Julian, Julian." Every word she uttered made the veins in my forehead throb. I wanted to rush over and cover her mouth just to get some peace. I was exhausted. "Fine, I'm going back to get things. Remember to apply the ointment on the nightstand." And also, suddenly, she asked something else, then buried her face in the covers, falling silent. Hearing her words, a wave of dejection washed over me. My heart was a mess of conflicting emotions. I simply lowered my head and whispered, "Okay." I turned and left the ward. Somehow, I found myself wandering back to that old, dilapidated shack alone. I didn't have the keys. In the end, I could do nothing but sit by the door all night long, lost in thought. I sat there until the neighbor lady spotted me during her morning exercise. "Julian, you're back," she exclaimed. "Why are you sitting at the door all alone? Why aren't you inside with your wife?" I looked up at her, confused. "My wife? Since when did I get married? Did you two young folks have a fight?" she asked. "Listen, if I weren't an old lady, I'd tell you off. Can't you be a bit more patient with her? Every neighbor around here knows how good your wife is. Even though she's clearly a busy woman, she's been coming here personally for years to clean this house. She even adopted Dee Dee. During the Lunar New Year and every other holiday, she visits all of us on your behalf. And those security guards at the gate? Your wife hired them specifically because she said the neighborhood security was poor." The old woman sighed. There were times when she was alone in that room, crying so loudly that even an old lady like me didn't dare go in. "Your wife is beautiful, kind-hearted, and devoted to you. She has money, too. What on earth are you dissatisfied with? What kind of misunderstanding could possibly be so hard to fix? Tell me." I tried to open my mouth to argue, to tell her she was my wife, but no words came out. Indeed, I thought, what kind of conflict is so great that it can't be explained? I stood up and looked at the windows of my old shack. They were sparkling clean. I understood everything now. I headed straight back to the hospital. When I walked into the room, Elena was sitting up in bed, happily munching on street food skewers. The moment she saw me, she dove back under the covers and lay down flat. "My teeth hurt. My mouth is full of sores. I'm so dizzy," she moaned theatrically. Her secretary looked at me, panicked, and quickly hid the breakfast skewers behind her back. "Mr. Lee, you're back. President Liu has been, making quite a fuss all night." "I have not," Elena squeaked. But the next second, she caught my gaze and shrank back, tucking her chin in her chest. I walked over and sat beside the bed. She guiltily toyed with the edge of the quilt, bowing her head and whispering timidly, "You didn't change your clothes from last night?" It turned out she was still playing a part, pretending she didn't know where I'd been. But with all the bodyguards she had stationed around me, how could I have gone anywhere without her knowing? I smiled and asked, "Didn't your secretary tell you?" Hearing that, she curled herself up into a ball, looking just like a tiny kitten, exactly like she did 3 years ago. "I went home," I said, watching her expression closely. "Thank you for everything you've done these past 3 years." She buried her head even deeper into the covers. Perhaps she thought I was about to give her a good person card, a polite way of saying goodbye. "Don't say anything," she muffled from under the sheets. I gently pulled her out of the blankets and teased her. 3 years ago, I didn't truly know you. Now, would you care to introduce yourself properly?" Elena's eyes lit up instantly. She cleared her throat and sat up straight, reciting her facts like an eager preschooler. "My name is Elena. I was born in Marine Crest. I am an only child. My height is 168.45 centimeters. My weight this morning was 45.78 kilograms. My ID number starts with 30,120. I am the current chairperson of the Lou Group. I studied foreign languages. My main hobby is Julian. In my spare time, I like movies and yoga. I am worth hundreds of millions. I own 27 properties in Marine Crest valued at over 10 million US dollars each. In my bedroom, the dressing room has 11 wardrobes. Most importantly, in the third drawer from the left, the secret is you are my life." I rushed to cover her mouth, my face flushing. I gave her a playful flick on the forehead. "We can talk about the rest of those things when we get home later." Elena clutched her forehead, looking at me with burning intensity. "What else do you want to know?" "I want to hear the rest of the story," I said softly. Through Elena's explanation, I finally pieced together the complete, true picture. 3 years ago, her father had suddenly fallen ill and slipped into a coma. Her relatives tried to devour the entire Lou Group in one fell swoop. The accident that took her sight was actually orchestrated by her uncle, who had arranged the car crash. As the sole heir to the Lou Group, those wolves were delighted to see her discarded by the hospital. She had been discharged with amnesia. She hadn't been entirely lying when she said she couldn't find her family. However, not long after she started living with me, her memory began to return. But she became terrified that if I knew her true identity, I would treat her differently or push her away. So, she kept up the act of being memory impaired. She was also trying to protect me. She didn't want me dragged into the violent power struggles of her family. At that time, the media was filled with headlines about the shaking foundations of the Lou Empire, but a bottom-tier worker like me never had the time to pay attention to high society gossip. During those days when she was recovering in my shack, she had been secretly contacting her loyal confidants. She stayed hidden in the shadows, playing a dangerous game of chess against her uncle and his conspirators. Her uncle had even sent assassins to finish her off, but she never expected that I would be the one caught in the crossfire, the one who would get hurt for her. Terrified for my life, she felt she had no choice but to ask Arthur to step in. The plan was to make me jealous and force me to leave for my own safety. But she never imagined I would leave so decisively. "You weren't just a pretty boy who lied about investors," she whispered. "You even conspired to fake your own death and delete every trace of yourself. It took me so much effort just to find you again. I didn't even know until later that Arthur had approached you once before. I wanted to explain everything, but I wasn't finished dealing with those old dogs of the Lou family. All I could do was wait and wait. And just now, I finally dared to cast the bait and let you bite the hook. I know I was wrong, Julian." I looked into her pained eyes and let out a cold snort. "Then what about those photos of you and Arthur in bed? And what was the point of calling him your fiancé now?" "I was afraid you wouldn't let yourself go," she admitted softly. "Arthur always wanted to date me, but I only ever had a business partnership with him. You're the one who had all those wrong thoughts. If I had known better, I never would have let him deceive you." I nodded slowly. Everything that happened 3 years ago, it turns out it was all a distorted gift from Elena. I thought I was leaving for her sake, choosing to vanish so she could have a better life. And she, fearing I would be targeted, deliberately pushed me away. In reality, all we ever wanted was each other. We wasted 3 years in vain, nearly living a lifetime of regret over a misunderstanding. I suddenly burst out laughing. This morning, the neighbor lady told me I already had a wife. "Did you know that?" Elena blinked innocently. Since I didn't know, Does that mean you're going to leave again? My wrist was gripped tightly. In the next second, our lips met. The story ends here. Thank you for listening.